Real quick. I just want to make sure that everybody catches the gist. So, I'm here today to talk about thyroid and about thyroid as it relates to weight because most people think that if they could just lose the weight, that then, thank you, Jeannie. If they could just lose the weight, their thyroid would heal. And the opposite is true. I just such a heartfelt understanding of this, and it breaks my heart because I think we live in a world that keeps telling women, especially, if you lose the weight, everything else will come in line. And the opposite is true. If we heal, then everything else will come in line, because it is not happening in isolation. That weight didn't come on your body because in most cases, and in any that I've ever seen, the weight didn't come on the body because the person was eating horrendously awful foods, just eating horrible, eating massive amounts. The reality is that the weight came on the body partly due to thyroid. And I'm going to stress this because it is not just due to thyroid. I've never seen a woman who that was just due to thyroid. Our emotions play a role. Our traumas play a role. How our experiences in our life and in our body, our connection with our body plays a role. Our willingness to sit and be present with our feelings plays a role. But thyroid is a major factor because it does run cellular metabolism. And we do need to have a voracious system that has heat and energy and vitality and can take what we eat and turn it into energy and then spread that energy around so your cells can raise their overall energetic vibration, raise their energetic capacity. All your organ systems can do what they need to do. That's the truth. And so instead of going about it the usual ways, which tend to be cutting calories, exercising more, often intermittent fasting, cutting carbohydrates, we need to do some other things that are focused on the real root cause, which is, hey, we need to boost thyroid. Well, when you cut calories, you're cutting out food source. So you're telling the body, hey, I'm not going to give you as many resources to work with. Your body's not stupid. It has workarounds. So it turns to the workarounds and it says, all right, well, you're not going to give me as many resources to work with. So I'm going to have to go into stress response mode. I'm going to have to produce stress hormones that then let me liberate fat from the cells, that let me burn that fat for fuel. There's a problem there, though. Because A, that is a low energy production mode. B, it is not thyroid enhancing. C, when you burn that fat for fuel, you liberate free fatty acids, many of which are toxic, many of which are polyunsaturated, which then block thyroid function at the cell. And this is a huge deal because the more we block thyroid function at the cell, the lower and lower our thyroid function gets. And so when we start doing that, we start liberating fats, as because we're cutting calories, we actually start diminishing thyroid function. Now here's another one. People love to cut carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are demonized like no other food in the world today. And people will say, if you cut those, you turn your body into a fat burning machine. You then will liberate and burn off and consume the fat on your body. You won't raise glucose levels. Well, there are some there's minor truths there, right? So if you don't eat carbohydrates, at least initially, your blood glucose will stay lower. But there's a challenge there because people with hypothyroid condition do not use glucose adequately because the cells are running at such a low energy state that then the glucose doesn't enter the cell, which means then the blood glucose stays high and people start saying, aha, see, the carbohydrates were the problem. That was what was creating your thyroid problem. But the truth is that the cells can't use the glucose or the fructose, which are part of our normal cell function. Lest anyone tell you that that's not a normal state of function for the human body. It is part of our normal cell function. It is essential for thyroid function to be using glucose and fructose for fuel. Your muscles have to store glycogen. That's what raises your metabolic rate. If you're not consuming good sources of glucose and fructose. With the women I work with, we talk about eating lovely, easy to digest carbohydrates, cooked fruit, some fruit juices, root vegetables that are lovely and cooked, some rice, some quinoa, potatoes, another great one, cooked squashes. I mean, these nourishing spleen building foods which give the body a source of fructose and glucose that then allow the cells to start using it and allow the liver and the muscles to store glycogen. And then the liver and the muscles have enhanced metabolic potential, which means we increase strength, we increase muscle tone, and in the liver it means we increase thyroid conversion of T4 to T3. Now you have active thyroid hormone that can then go to the cell and enact high energy pathways. So the more that we cut those carbohydrates out of the diet, the more we lean towards that stress response, because our body sees that the absence of glucose means we have to raise cortisol, and then we have to use cortisol to do that job, which then actually has to liberate the fats, which then we burn for fuel, which exposes the cells and the system to stored polyunsaturated fats, and by the way, all the toxicity that's there. Our fat is a storage repository for toxicity that our body wisely set out of the way so it wouldn't cause damage in the body, especially when the liver and the kidneys were not capable of doing detoxification. And then we go and start liberating it without a remedy for the liver or the kidneys to do their job. We stack on another challenge, and that we've liberated toxicity that we do not have the capacity to then move through the proper channels, and then it can cause damage as we go. So that's another, big challenge there. Then we talk about intermittent fasting. Well, people who have strong liver and kidney and who have a lot of glycogen storage, they can go longer without eating. But people who have very limited glycogen storage and they have limited functionality at the liver and at the muscle tissue and with the thyroid function at the cell, they can't, because their storage capacity is so low that very quickly they get flipped over into stress response mode again, and then you're right back at it. You're back at cortisol production. You're back at burning fat for fuel. You're back at lowering cell energy so you can use the less energy dependent pathways. You're back at not using glucose and fructose. This has a huge impact on your brain too, you guys. Your brain needs glucose for proper function. So the more that we shove our body down this path thinking, well, I'm just focusing on losing weight, then what happens is that we're taxing these systems and we're causing them huge amounts of stress, and we're creating an untenable position by which the body has to keep adapting. And so yes, those people, I'm not going to deny that when there's all these boards and Facebook pages and blog posts and doctors out there who are saying this is the fastest way, this is the, when you lose the weight you'll finally be healthy, and I will counter that by saying I've seen so many women in my own practice over the last 20 years. I went that route myself. I can tell you hands down, I was a CrossFitter who did extremely low carb paleo, and although yes, I put on some muscle, I leaned out, but you know what kept happening is I kept injuring myself. Why? Because my tissues did not have veracity or strength. I was just demanding that they work the way that I wanted them to work. I was not sleeping. I was peeing all the time. I was a raging bitch, if I can be really honest. I was constantly snapping at the people in my life. I did not want to have sex with my husband. I did not have a libido, and my brain was constantly on alert. And so what happened was I put my body so far into stress mode that eventually in my case I had to quit CrossFit because the injuries got too extreme, and I was really compromising my ability to show up in my life, and I was tired of being angry and cranky. And and then that plunged me into a 4-year time span that it took me to even begin to climb out of the thyroid pit that I put myself in. And this is what happens, is that it goes and goes and goes. That was 2 to 3 years for me. So we go along, it seems to be fine, because our body's doing adaptation. It's like, okay, I'll adapt with you. Okay, I'll adapt with you. And then we're going to reach a threshold. And by that time, we've descended so far into the hypothyroid state at the cell that there's no veracity left. And in fact, the flip side is that we've really tanked our metabolism because the cell energy production pathways have dropped so low that then, we start to change it up. We start to add some carbohydrates, which is what I did. And then the body says, excuse me, the body doesn't have the capacity to put those to use the way it needs to, and the metabolism stays really low and it can't rise. And this is why when you look statistically at normal weight loss efforts, the things we're talking about, most of those people will regain the weight within Sorry, within 3 to 5 years, all of it and more. And the reason is because the root cause never got changed. You didn't build thyroid strength. You didn't build veracity in the system. You didn't build the cell energy. And so you plunge the body into this low function state where stress hormones are running the show. Now, what happens in the other systems? Let's look outside the thyroid system. For women, this is significant because the more we stay in that state, our tissue estrogen is going to rise, the stress-based estrogen production. While that rises, our functional estrogen is going to decrease. So now we've got tissue estrogen rising, which creates inflammation, which also sets up for a lot of women situations that lead to precancer conditions. But our natural estrogen production is diminishing, which then what happens? Well, we don't have plump, beautiful tissues. Our sex drive is going to decrease. Your pelvic health is going to change dramatically. So if you're perimenopause or menopausal, that's where you're going to see a lot of the tissue atrophy. You're not going to have lubrication. You're also going to notice your sex drive's down. Your brain is foggy. You don't feel like that feminine glow and flow, because that's going away. Now, that also, those same conditions are going to impact progesterone production. Progesterone and thyroid are closely linked. They're like partners. And so as progesterone goes down, the thyroid goes down even further. And so does our sleep quality. And so does our ability to relax. And so does our sense of peace. And we tend then towards the anxiety train and the depression side of things. So as you can see, it quickly spreads out. It's the whole system, right? And it started with, well, if I could just get the weight off, then everything would be better. But these are all the background things that are happening in the meantime. So the way that you heal the thyroid is you have to eat enough, first off. You have to eat, a bare minimum for most women is 1,500 calories. For many, it's going to, especially as their metabolism gets stronger, it's going to be 1,800, 2,000. It's going to be eating those good digestible carbohydrates, the cooked fruits, the certain fruit juices like orange juice for most can work, for some it doesn't. Cooked root vegetables, cooked squash, sweet potatoes, rice, quinoa, some wild rice, maybe some buckwheat. These good carbohydrates. Fruit can be really essential for a lot of people because it's combining fructose and glucose, and the fructose can bypass the damage that's been done by the polyunsaturated fats and the stress in the body, which sometimes can actually impair the glucose metabolic receptors in the cell. Fructose can bypass that and it can get into the cell, which means it can start those metabolic pathways, which is why using fruit balanced with good, easy to digest proteins, balanced with high nutrient density foods, balanced with good quality fats. But for a lot of people, that also means not adding tons of fat to their life, meaning a lot of food has beautiful fats in it. We start talking about fish and grass-fed beef and good quality grass-fed dairy and eggs, and we've got good sources of fat, those saturated fats that are going to be the precursors to the very same hormones that we're trying to get invigorated and in production again, right? So that one foundation. You also want to be sure you're not over exercising. Another huge problem. So a lot of exercise. So I'm a fan of movement, but not so much a fan of exercise, and there's a difference to me. So movement is something that you do because it feels so good in your body, and you stay connected to your body, and you're in the movement, and it's building tissue strength and structural integrity and lymphatic flow, and you're joyful and able to actually be relaxed the whole time you do it. But for most people, exercise is something they do because they should, because there's a preset, well, I must get through this many reps. I must go this far. I must go at this pace. So it's this very intellectualized set of parameters that we set these expectations. And a lot of times in that, we actually try to escape our bodies. So a lot of exercise, I belonged to a gym for most of my adult life, right? So you see all the people on the treadmills or on the ellipticals or riding a bike, and they're doing anything but paying attention to their body. They're watching TV, and they're talking on their phone, they're looking at screens, I don't know, but they're not in their body. They're in their head. They're escaping their body. Whereas a lot of forms of movement make us be present in our body. A lot of yoga makes us be present in our body, where we're both elongating and moving the lymph and building strength, but also listening for the feedback. If our body says stop, we are able to stop versus pushing right past those boundaries. Now, how can you know if your exercise is inducing stress response? Check your temp and pulse afterwards. 30 minutes after you exercise, if your temperature drops, well, and it would be good to know what your temperature normally is. But if you notice a drop, you pushed too far. You went past that boundary. And I will tell you, when your cells are really exhausted, you don't have glycogen storage, your liver can't store glycogen, that may be for some people initially like a mile-long walk is like the end. Like that's it. That's all I got. Or a very gentle yoga class. And it's like, that's all I got. I have women who start with me, and as we start to really pay attention to what their cells are really doing, initially I've had some say, I did go to a really gentle yoga class, and because I was paying attention to my body, I actually noticed halfway through that my body was like child's pose or savasana now. And they started to listen. But what happens then is, because you start to give that relationship credence, then your cells can start to respond. They actually have more leeway to do more healing, which brings up thyroid function, which raises metabolic level, which actually gives you more return. The same thing is true. We also heal thyroid by eating more frequently. For a lot of women, this will mean initially eating multiple times a day. Not waiting till noon, not doing the black coffee routine in the morning so that, I don't get hungry once I drink my black coffee. Of course you don't get hungry once you drink black coffee. Black coffee is a cortisol producer. That's why if you're going to have coffee, it should have some milk in it. It should have maybe a little bit of sweetener depending on your constitution, so that you're balancing out that coffee, which actually can be really good for some people to help the liver, to help the gut, to help cell energy production. But you're balancing it with, again, carbohydrates, some fat, some protein. There's a routine here. So you're not just constantly suppressing your body's impulses, because that's what a lot of people do. When they start thinking about weight loss, they're like, oh, I'm going to suppress my body's impulses. I'm going to master my body. Now, those things are essential because you have to build back the thyroid veracity and the cell energy production. You have to put the glycogen back in the muscles. You have to put the glycogen back in the liver. You have to get your cells using glucose again. You have to help your body put all those signals back in play. You also are going to have to foster that relationship with your body, because I can tell you, for 80% of women, it is not going to just be, well, hey, I got my thyroid back, here we go. It's got to also have a relationship to feeling our feelings and being present in what our body's really been asking for. For some women, there's a huge need to connect to what that child self inside of them is asking for, to regulate daily cycles, sleep and wake cycles, to really take time to walk through the totality of the relationship we've had with food our whole life. For a lot of women, that's a huge issue, because we have background beliefs that, whether it's broccoli or salad or fish or a brownie, pretty much we question whether all food's going to get us. That also has to be dealt with, because that sends messages back. I've talked a lot about how our cells are mini universes. They have personalities. They have energy behind them. Well, if your cells are hearing that everything is questionable as to whether we can handle it, we can process it, we can put it to use, and we question all the time, this is where the overexercising comes in and the calorie cutting comes in. It's because we develop beliefs that our body is not to be trusted, that we cannot in any case trust it. And quite the opposite is true. There is the capacity to build a relationship with your body where you can trust it and you can know with certainty, my body can handle anything, because it has innate, beautifully designed divine pathways that know exactly what we need and exactly what we don't, and it can process and eliminate anything it doesn't need. And this is another thing that we have to give attention to. And we talk about this in the work I do with women, as well as, how we build that energy back and how we restore the thyroid connection and how we build the glycogen stores. And we have to work at it from that level of function where it's the totality, again, it's the totality of self. But we don't first say our attempted goal is weight loss, because that won't work. In fact, if you've seen, I have another video on here that I talk about, I won't take on anyone as a client whose only goal is weight loss. I absolutely won't, because it doesn't work that way. If you're looking for rapid weight loss, your body is just going to have to suffer to get there. But if you look to heal your metabolism, what's going to happen is you get your brain back, you get beautiful skin back, you get beautiful hair back, you get vibrance, you get fun, you get joy, you get trust in your body, you get a sex drive, you get a loving relationship with self. You get to start to shine in your brightness. You get to show up in your passion. Those are the things that come from a fully vibrant self versus just a number on a scale, just a pant size, because they're not the same thing. And once you heal, then your body will recognize, oh, it's safe to enact the most beautiful plan, to enact our perfect proportion, to enact vibrance, to enact a strong metabolism. And when your body decides it's safe, then what you get is something that's permanent. You get something that you aren't going to be revisiting in 2 years because Christmas cookies threw it all out of whack, or that vacation you took threw it all out of whack, because it's not transient. It's not situationally dependent. It becomes the core of how your system functions. And because of that, it's sustainable forever. And that's what most people want. I know that's what I want. I don't know if that's what you want. But that's what healing is really all about, which is why the path to healing thyroid, thanks, Michelle, the path to healing the metabolism is to heal those cells and to inhabit our body and to stop trying to punish our body to get it to come in line, and instead recognize that these are dynamic systems. They've been doing what they could do according to the information we gave them, but we can change the nature of that relationship. We can change how we interact with them. We can change how we speak and how we listen, and as a result, we can build that veracity back, and as a result we can have everything we want, but it'll be better than you have ever imagined, I guarantee you. So for all of you who've been thinking, I just need to lose weight, I hope this makes you reconsider. I hope this makes you go, oh my gosh, because someone had put it really well. Someone had said, when your hair is getting brittle because of a thyroid condition, you don't expect that using some fancy biotin shampoo is going to fix your thyroid, right? You don't, because oh, that's not going to fix my thyroid. It's going to be a cosmetic change. Well, let's think about that in terms of the whole body. If I know I need this change, well, then where's the change really needed? And if you're done, beating yourself into the ground and trying to make your body behave, and you actually want to heal that thyroid system and that cell system and the emotions and the self within the self, then it's time to take a different approach and give up that really aggressive sort of controlling model, and actually start to give your body back what it's been asking for your whole existence, probably. So this is one of the things I do with women as we walk through the Thriving Health program, as we address this from this perspective and compassionately interact with our bodies and learn how to use these tools to those outcomes. And so certainly if you want that, post a message, send me a message, however you want. But there's another path to healing that gives you freedom with food. It gives you freedom in your body. It gives you joy. It taps you back into the essence. It raises that vibrance, and you get to be free. And that's the best thing of all, is that it's no longer this contingency related experience. So I hope that was helpful and insightful, and I love that you joined me, and I hope you all have a blessed day.